I'm going to keep my mask on because my next guest or the next conversation partner I've got has got to keep his on. So we're going to be in a little bit of partnership with each other. So I want to bring Faisal into the conversation, and this is going to be one of our last common ground conversations for this evening. But let's have it. Come on in, Faisal. Let's chat. There he is.
Hello, Dean Elmore.
How you doing?
Hey.
So tell
I'm
us where
doing
you
really
are.
well.
I'm sorry, where are you in the world right now?
I am in Boston in my South Campus apartment here. It's 9:23 p.m.
Cool. And so Faisal, people might say, so if you're in your apartment, why are you wearing your face covering, your mask? What's up with that?
That's a great question, Dean Elmore. So what's happened is my roommate just got back from Arizona, and while she's kind of like showering and like getting ready and stuff, I just felt like to protect myself, to protect her, I'm just wearing my mask for the time being. And thank you for your solidarity. I love that purple mask.
Hi, there you go. Hey, that is the most well-lit room I have seen today. Check you out.
Thank you. I recently bought these lights. They kind of lit up the place a little bit.
So Faisal, we were talking earlier this week. You have not seen your family for almost a year now. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. It's been since January 2020, which is very unusual. Normally, I would see them like every 6 months, but as you know, it's been a very unusual year.
And so you've been here through the pandemic and through everything that's been going on.
That's right. Yeah, I was basically here in March when it all went down, and I couldn't get back to where my parents live in Dubai, so I had to stay here. And then through the summer, BU graciously gave me some housing, and this is where I've been. It's been interesting, definitely lonely at times, but now that everyone's kind of back, it is a lot easier to kind of like live my life, and I still talk to my family a lot. But yeah, it's been a while.
So talk to me about how you're working through connecting with your family. I know family's pretty important to you. How are you dealing with this and doing what you're doing without that proximity?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I mean, there's one story I'd love to tell you about my class I was taking this past fall. It was on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and that is actually a big deal for me because, my dad is Palestinian, and that was a really emotional class to take. And so one thing that I did with my professor's help, because she wanted someone like with firsthand experience to talk to us, is I asked my dad to come into the Zoom room for one of our classes. And in that way, he was sort of able to share in my college experience and at the same time, give us an education, including myself. I learned a lot that day. And we stay in connection like that. I take him around Boston with my phone on Zoom, and I just try to keep them involved in my life, really bring them here.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm going to ask you a different question, but I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I hope that people see that there's some tips there that you try to make sure that that thing that matters the most to you, you not lose over the course of all this, that you still keep that connection with your family, you still keep those conversations going. So, I'm intrigued. I'm really curious. You're telling me that you are, in essence, you're part Palestinian, if not all Palestinian, and you're taking this class on the Middle East conflict that is one of those conversations a lot of people don't even want to go near, and then you get your dad engaged with it. Tell me what that's about and how you felt doing all that.
Yeah. So I'm Finnish and Palestinian, actually. And so it was not easy. I'm normally a very extroverted person, but to like put my family in the spotlight like that was really it was a push for me. And I think one of the things that helped is we had this sense of trust in that class. I think one day at the beginning of the semester, someone like cracked a joke. Someone started singing at the beginning of class, and that sort of like broke the ice for everyone. And so I started to feel comfortable with these people. I would consider some of them my friends even now. And so that topic that I was like very nervous initially, the first few classes, I remember just I was shaking, sitting at this very table, just shaking, like nervous that I was going to be put on the spot, made to kind of represent people in a way that I didn't feel comfortable doing. But pretty quickly I realized these people were all there to learn in earnest, and that in and of itself made a big difference. And so by the time my dad came, I was like friends with half these people, so it was a lot easier.
So what was your dad's experience like with this?
Yeah, so he was also nervous, which I was surprised by because I wasn't really expecting him to to be nervous, but that makes sense. It's a sensitive topic, and he was very happy to come, and he talked to us about his college days in Jerusalem and like moving to Finland, which is where he met my mom, and just all kinds of things like that. And I also learned things about him that even though I lived with him for 18 years, I never knew. Like I didn't know he like ran a political movement in college. I thought that was really cool, and I was like, I can draw some parallels from what I do in college to what he did, even though the circumstances were so different. But it was a really beautiful moment. I think all of us had kind of tears in our eyes by the end of it too. It was wonderful.
Sounds like you're proud.
Yes, yes, I definitely am. And I felt really proud of my heritage that day. I felt like I had sort of done a good thing for myself and for maybe even other people, and I felt really good that day.
And you probably had some times in which during this class you were angry. And talk to us a little bit about some of that and what it was that made you so angry at times.
Yeah, one time in class we watched a video about one of the checkpoints which they have sort of on the West Bank border, and there were some people not being treated very nicely. And in fact, there was like a bit of violence, and that really got to me because it wasn't anyone in the class, but it was just that whole atmosphere, the tension, everything about it was just really hard to deal with. I felt very helpless. And so what I did is I told my classmates that. I basically told them how I was feeling. And, I broke down a little bit in tears at the end of it because it was so moving, and in such a bad way, I would say moving, but also in a good way because um, I felt I felt better after that. I felt like I had said my piece and I had sort of contributed something, and I felt like I had learned a lot. But there were definitely moments when I kind of felt myself, losing control a little bit, like I didn't have much power over the situation. But that's when I like moved to open up to my classmates to be a little more interactive and engaged in the conversation, and that helped.
Hmm. Seems like vulnerability is what we're talking about here. So,
Absolutely.
do you find any connections or maybe an ease or a better way, or maybe even more of a difficult situation with connecting with any of the political movements here in the United States, or some of the larger conversations around justice, racial justice, and those sorts of things? Because some people will draw parallels. And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that is a hard thing. I've been in the US for about 2.5 years now, and I still find myself kind of learning every day to navigate the environment. I think people in the US have a very certain set of understandings about the way that things are. Like, for instance, the question of race comes up a lot for me because under the US, technically, Middle Eastern is the same as white. But I would say I don't feel particularly white in this community, at least not in all the ways that I think that can mean to some people in the US. And so that's a hard thing for me to accept, that I have to put that down as white, even though that's not really what I feel. And so I sometimes check other or mixed. But it's a very, sometimes you feel pigeonholed. I think BU is better than probably other places in the US about this because we are a more diverse and open community. But some of the political movements on campus, I find myself kind of repelled by because they are kind of like all about making an us versus them mentality. I go to places like the Howard Thurman Center where people share and are open and just want to hear each other out and meet each other. And I think that conversation is more important than the us versus them, with us or against us kind of mentality.
You mentioned your participation around campus. Are there some other places where people might find you, discover you, have some conversations with you?
Yeah, well, I do a few things. I tutor at the Educational Resource Center if you happen to need help in math or physics. I go to, when before COVID and even during COVID, I do go to the GSU, walk around campus. You'll see me on ComAv. Sometimes I'm biking. If you see me in one of my classes, anything like that. I also host book club at the Howard Thurman Center. So, find me, send a message even during like the Zoom meeting we're about to have, and just, reach out. I'm happy to talk.
Cool. And one final question. I like asking people this. What's bringing you joy right now?
I feel like it is a new day in some ways. I feel like there is hope on the horizon, and I feel that this break has energized me for another semester. I feel optimistic about the future, and I think that's actually a big thing. Um, I used to always be optimistic. This past year has kind of challenged that, and I'm feeling it coming back. So I am very joyful about that.
Well, Faisal, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, how you are in the world, and for sharing with us this evening. Here, it's this evening, and in other places, this morning and this afternoon. Be well.
Thank you, Dean Elmore. I really appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Great to see you.
So I hope that you are able to have and have had some of these kinds of conversations, will continue to, that you'll find Ishita and that you'll find Faisal and other people out there, that you engage the facilitators that you've had and other people. These are people in a social network. These are people who are not just in your class, but they are also these people that you've got to meet. Again, I'm getting back to that big question many of you have. How do I meet people around here, especially with the COVID situation the way that it might be? You meet them by doing exactly what you've seen. You meet them by doing exactly what you've done. You meet them when you're in a classroom, and although they may be 6 or 12 feet away, you can still have these conversations. You meet them by going in your residence hall, knocking on their door, staying outside of their room for sure with your mask on, inviting them to a larger space where you can talk to each other. That is how you've got to do it. This is active. This is almost like a sport. You can do it. And you should do it. You have permission to do it, and give yourself permission to have these common ground conversations or debates or arguments, whatever they might be. But you need to engage other human beings. So that's a little bit of common ground. It is an ongoing set of conversations and an ongoing set of things that we must do.